Out here for you. Okay, and then, okay, fabulous. Okay, hey everybody. My name is Professor Kalsee Kohs. I'm a professor here at DiviNation Academy. If you haven't been here with us before, thank you so much for finding us. We are so happy to have you. We are a pagan academy, and our philosophy is education should be free and accessible to all. So that's what we do. So that's what we offer to you on so many different topics, and everything that we do is it's not ever going to cost you a dime. That's really key to us. How you can get more information on us is going to be first and foremost our Facebook page. That is how you can enroll in the academy afterwards. If you love what you hear from me, when you enroll in the academy as a student, like I said, it's free, doesn't cost you anything, but you get access to our private Facebook community, our private Facebook messengers, our chats, our groups, and things like that. That also gives you access to your professors pretty much all the time. Like we're almost all of our professors are admins in some capacity, and you have access to most of them almost all the time. And then other ways that you can find us is going to be their YouTube page. That is where most of our classes get posted. Um, all of mine get posted there. We have over 100 videos right now on a lot of different topics. Um, so we have I think over 100 videos and a lot of different topics. I think when I looked, it's like 136 now. So definitely go check it out. Lots of amazing things you can look there. I have previous classes on dark goddesses that are on there. Some that I've taught that are not on there yet. Our amazing director that we have, she does review every single video to make sure that no weird YouTube rules are going to be broken and then it gets taken down. So once she reviews them, then they get posted. So it does take a little bit of time. It is not immediate. So just bear with us on that as well, because we just want to make sure that, like I said, your education stays accessible to you. Next way that you can find us is going to be our website. Please, even if you're a student and you haven't ever checked this out, go check this out. If you're not a student, go check this out. We have so many resources there for you. We have our bibliographies, we have our sources cited, we have our study guides there. We have accesses to some professors put like entire PDFs of books on there for you. There's lots of things available to you on there. It also gives you information about our professors. It gives you information about our private apprenticeships we offer. It gives you information about our certification programs we offer. I'm currently working on one in Fey Magic, which is really hard to find. So like definitely just go look and see what we all have to offer on there. And then really quick, I always do about me, a little tiny bit about me. So again, my name is Kalsee Kohs. I am a solitary practitioner. I'm a gray practitioner. I consider myself a mystic. I work from all different pantheons, all different paths, cultures, religions. I've worked with different teachers on different topics like shamanism, witchcraft, paganism, magic, a lot of different paths, a lot of different pantheons. I use deity work. It's a very main thing for me. So that's why I'm teaching this Dark Goddess devotionals. Also, I'm doing it the Dark Goddesses because, again, I am a gray mystic. So everything for me is a place of duality. I do not view these entities and these deities as evil or bad or in a negative way in any shape or form. So I also ask with this class, please come to them with reverence and respect. We are viewing them as powerful entities that are there to help us in our life. We're not viewing them as like negative entities to try to stay away from or anything like that. We are approaching them with absolute reverence and respect. I view things in a very energetic form where light is just the absence of dark and dark is just the absence of light. It's not this good versus evil thing. So that is how I'm going to teach them. And that is how I'm going to present them to you when I invoke them. When it comes to class, real quick, a rundown of how I do things here, because I have a lot of new people actually here today too. So that's also kind of why I'm doing that. I do have a study guide. If you need it, please let me know. I'll put the link in the chat again if you need it. But I have a study guide that I run through with you guys. I present the goddess to you from an archaeological standpoint, a historical standpoint, who they are spiritually, who they are culturally, who they are magic, witchcraft wise, how you can use them in your practice, how you can use them in your life. I give you different stories from the different cultures where you find them. I'll run down different myths for you. And I also will show you, again, prayers, invocations, ways to work with them in your life. And then the last half hour, I typically, what I do is I invoke them for you. I can channel, invoke, and vessel them. So I invoke them for you so you can meet them, you can be in their presence, and you can experience them. Thank you for sending that link for me for the study guide. I super appreciate it. Okay, fabulous. So we are going to get going. Like I said, Hekate, a lot to her. And I want to emphasize her pronunciation. You hear it wrong a lot. It's the middle syllable that needs to be like emphasized for her. It's Hekate or Hekate. You can hear it either way. You'll see it spelled either with a K or a C. You'll also see it, like I said, it's interchangeable in my study guide. You even see me do it. I switch in and out. I've referenced her both ways. So you'll hear me go in and out, but I always make sure to like emphasize that middle syllable, the middle syllable for her. That also, when it comes to worship, when we get there, that's the number one way to start worshiping her, is make sure you pronounce her name correctly. It is mispronounced very, very frequently. Okay, so first and foremost, who is Hekate? Hekate is a very complex goddess with a super, super long history. She's considered a goddess of witchcraft. She's a guide along the path. That really shows up in the story with Persephone and Demeter. If you're in my class with Persephone, I touched on this and you already learned that, so you can go and watch that as well if you want the whole breakdown of that story. A little bit later, though, I will talk about like Hecate's part specifically in that. And then she's also known as the universal keeper of the keys. She's referenced with keys like once in mythology, and then that is actually a very modern view of her. And I'm going to talk about that later. I've worked with her in that form as a keeper of the keys, and it's an amazing path, an amazing practice to work with her as, but that is more modern. But that is a very, like I said, that's a very big epithet in what she's known as. There's a lot to learn about her in written records, but in all reality, to really understand her, you need to experience her. There's so much to her. You can learn as much as you want, but until you really experience her and you go like you're not really going to fully understand like the capacity of what she can represent. She's also known as like goddess of the crossroads. That's a super big epithet and title for her. That's something that she's really known for. I'm going to go into detail about that as well. That also, because of that, I think is why sometimes when I'm looking through like different communities and I'm listening to different podcasts and I'm listening to other people like newer witches and, even in the last decade, somehow she got tied to the devil. I don't know. And like, don't work with her, like tied to the devil and like that. That's that's not thing. She's way older than the devil. But I think like her being tied to crossroads might be why that also happened. Because a lot of times in Christianity, they always said like going to the crossroads is when you meet with the devil. And because she's the keeper of the crossroads and the boundaries, and all of that, and a lot of her rituals, you go to the crossroads to meet her. I think that's where that correlation also came in as well. But again, like she's much older. She's much older than the devil and the Christian version of the devil and like how the devil is viewed now. So like they shouldn't be associated at all. So little side note, I wanted that to get that out of there too when I talked about the crossroads. She's really seen as a guide that leads us back to our soul. That's something I really truly see for her. I've noticed as well, like in modern day, and I think again this comes from the keeper of the keys. And like I said, I've used her in that capacity. But I think a lot of more invocations and prayers lately, and that I've noticed and I've seen other people using, they're asking for her to give the information and for her to do the things like show them the right road, show them which way to choose. But that's really not her purpose. Her purpose is really to hold those torches and those lanterns and like guide you back into your actual soul so you can decide which path, because none of those paths are wrong. They're just going to be different paths to get you to the same destination, and you get to choose which one you're going to be going on. And that's like how she presents at the crossroads. And a lot of times she's also seen as the great mother. I think this comes from the more Wiccan and modern neo-paganism view of her as a triple goddess and representing that mother maiden crone, because that mother maiden crone aspect is a very modern, and that comes from Robert Graves, the white goddess. He actually even wrote and tried to claim that she was the oldest triple goddess in existence. But personally, I disagree with that. And a lot of scholars disagree with that as well, because if you even look at the Morrigan, who I covered yesterday, like she's much older than Hekate, and she's considered a triple goddess as well. But in Wicca and in Robert Graves's The White Goddess, he does actually reference her as the original, like the most powerful triple goddess. And again, like that's very more modern, very more new. A lot of people end up coming to Hekate when it comes to times of like great personal loss and great personal pain. She can bring a lot of power and a lot of healing. I see this a lot personally myself, this is a lot of times how I've used her and how she's represented to me, as well. And I think it comes a lot from her story, Persephone. Like she is the one that is there, um, holding Demeter's hand and comforting her, and she's defying Zeus and she's defying Hades, and she's like leading Demeter with absolute comfort and protection, like with her torches into the underworld to go and find her daughter. And so like she like really shows up in like those great personal pains and losses. There's also quite a few other myths and stories. There's one with the polecat, one of her hounds is said to be, you know, the origins of one of her hounds, which I'm going to go over. Like she rescues quite a few people and brings them in as her personal attendants because they went through such personal pain and loss. Like she just wants to hold them and wrap them up and protect them. So she can really bring that power and that healing in. She's also known as a spinner of the wheel of time and the weaver of magic. One of her symbols is the wheel, and I'm going to go into really big detail later about that, but that is something that does spark with her. She's also known as being like literally that fiery spark that lives in with all of us, like lives within the universe. She's known as that fiery spark that's within us. She's known as the fuel that um like really motivates like witches and like the feminine movement. She's getting really tied to that in modern days, but like she's known as mother of witches, queen of witches. She's really, really tied to that. Witches are actually in some actually kind of multiple different ways throughout history are referenced as like her chosen. They're also known as the horde as well, can be associated with like her and the witches. So she's really associated with witches and magic and weaving the spells and weaving rituals. And she, again, Hekate, is an ancient Greek goddess. She does come from Greek. I don't know if I said that already. I should have right from the beginning, but she is an ancient Greek goddess. She was worshipped for multiple different things. Traditionally, she really started as like a Greek goddess of the moon and the underworld, and then the crossroads and the spiritual realm and necromancy and witchcraft. That kind of like that did flow in still ancient times, but flow in later. But really, traditionally, it was the moon, like, and the underworld, where she was really, really revered and where she was really attached to. She was even like, if you look at her in like ancient Italy, she kind of almost like sometimes her and Diana, like once you get to Roman times, like they really like morph and kind of like the same person. You'll see her alongside Artemis at times as well. In ancient times, referenced as a maiden. Again, like she does show up in like the triple goddess form, but not as like all three faces herself. She is referenced as a maiden. There are times in literature on some ancient Greek papyri where she's referenced as a virgin maiden, even just like Artemis was. But like ancient wise, traditionally, like she was referenced as that maiden, and then again later in that Wicca, that modern time, she does get all three of those spaces. But in ancient times, that's where she was. Um, and then also with her stories and her origins, it gets super, super interesting. Her origins have a lot of different takes. There's a couple different ones. The most like common one is that, oh, 1 second, guys. I'm actually going to take a break here and jump in the chat. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop for 1 minute because that's kind of the overview for her. And then I'm going to start really going into her origins, her history, archaeology. But that's an overview and a rundown of like who she is. Any questions quickly before I go the next chunk? And if you're following along in the study guide too, like I don't word for word go through the study guides. Like if you are trying to like follow along, like I'm not going to be like word for word in there. But everything in there I will cover in some way. I will be paraphrasing, and then that all is extra information that you have available to you. How Hekate is helpful to women. I will actually go over that towards the end. I have an actually entire section at the end towards the last chunk of the study guide. That is all about her connection to how she's helpful to women. I missed the start. How can we see the first part of the recording? So it is recorded and it will be posted to YouTube. It won't be posted to YouTube immediately. Our director, she reviews all of our classes before they get posted just to make sure that like no weird YouTube rules are going to be broken. And so it doesn't get taken down. So it will get posted though to YouTube eventually. Okay, honey, go ahead.
You might cover this later on, but you said that traditionally she or anciently she was a virgin goddess, and now she got all three aspects. Do we work with all three, or should we work with the one, or either one
So
you feel called to?
it's whatever you feel called to on like that's the big reason why I'm teaching you guys like all the different ways that like she has been worshipped, all the different ways that she's been studied, because she may pull to you differently, and she also may pull to you differently at different times in your life and different periods in your life. So there was a period of my time in my life where I was really like needing deep shadow work. My typical goddesses that I work with, like I wasn't getting the work and the answers. So that's when I went on the journey for the keepers of the keys, and that's when I went on that path and like went to go worship her that way. And in that sense, she actually really is seen as like a triple goddess and like all three aspects in one. And there's been other points in my life to where like I did pull on her alongside of the Morrigan when I was going through my transition of maiden to mother. And when I was going through like my son being my pregnancy, my son being born. So it depends on how she presents to you and how you need to work with her. That's why I show you guys like all the different ways that she has been represented, because again, like you may need to work with her in different ways at different times.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, she can be really protective. Like she's super protective. That doesn't surprise me that she would show up during that time. Okay, so let me jump back here. Okay, actually, before I go over her, I'm gonna decide what I want to do here. Okay. So there's actually a couple other things I want to touch on. So one thing that's really big on her is she is considered a liminal spirit. If you don't know what that means, it means that she guards thresholds between like the human and the spirit world. That's a big reason why she's considered at the crossroads. She's also found at your doorways of your homes. She's found at the gates of cemeteries. That's why you'll see her energy like really prominently, like with between like midnight and 12:01 when the day is changing. Like that's a very liminal time, like when you have that time of day changing, sunset, like sunrise. When you feel like when you have those liminal moments, even in space and time, like that's when like you really will be able to harness your energy, and like those are places and portals that like she guards. Um, as well, like that's why a lot of some people say like only work with her on the full moon, but I say full moon and new moon. You could even do waxing and waning as well, because those are liminal moments as well. New moon and full moon are just as important. Like I don't think the full moon's any more important than new moon, so that's why I do both with her. I've never had a negative reaction by honoring her on both moons. um but she is typically associated with the full moon. And then because of that being a liminal spirit, she also mediates like between the realms as well. So that means like the realm of life and the underworld, the realm of like your household and the world, like the realm between like your inside, like your subconscious and like your consciousness, like your inner um your shadow, your ego, like all of that. Like she mediates between all those realms. I think that's also a big reason, like because she mediates between those realms, she got that dark goddess, the don't work with her, she's scary. You'll see her through many myths to where she's the one that's actually bringing heroes down between the underworld, and like she's facilitating that. She's the one holding the torches. She's the one allowing that. She even borrows Cerberus sometimes from Hades. You'll see those two together. Like and Cerberus's role is to be the gatekeeper of of Hades and the underworld. So seeing those two together, like that makes perfect sense. So the liminal spirit, because she's also liminal spirit and she holds those boundaries and she's at those places and at those times, that ties her greatly to transformation. Super great lead to transformation. That is why like she is a phenomenal deity to work with shadow work. Phenomenal deity to work with any type of transformation in your life. I think this is also why she has the capability to encompass that entire three goddess energy, and like where that idea came from is because she harnesses that absolute energy of transformation. So why wouldn't she be able to harness all three aspects of the divine feminine's transformation. So I think this is also kind of like where that connection comes from, and why I think it's totally why I think it's totally possible and totally okay to worship her in that way, in that sense. It just depends on how she's drawn to you, and why you can also separate her out as well. Um, and then again, like she's considered dark, but she really is light. Like she's the goddess, like childbirth. That's a liminal time in life. Like that's a liminal thing. That's a threshold. Like she is there at that boundary. Like she is there facilitating that. Like that's most people don't consider childbirth a dark thing. I mean, that is, I mean, it can be, but it's a light aspect for the most part. So that's why she really is a sense of polarity. That's why I think she's also so important, and why a lot of witches, even in the very beginning, are super drawn to her, and they don't even realize that this aspect is why they're so drawn to her. Is because she does really represent duality in a way that I think that people are forgetting and not seeing. And we need that. Like we need that duality, we need that balance. And again, like I also feel like she's so light because she is so protective. She's so protective. Like in the stories and like in the hymn of like her when she's going down with Demeter, like she's literally comforting her, holding her hand, like guiding her to help her find her daughter. Like she literally defies the two of the most powerful gods. Like Anne's like, nah, like screw this. Like I'm gonna go tell her like what I saw, and like I'm gonna go help her find her daughter. Like she's in severe pain, and like this isn't okay. And again, I'm gonna go through it in a little bit more detail later, but she's got other references throughout history where she really does protect people. Um, Also, like she is super highly honored ancient wise. She's honored very greatly by Zeus. Like Zeus sings her absolute praises, and he bestows upon her like one of the biggest honors. I can't find any other deity like in writings that he gives more power to than her. He gives her so much power. One of her origins, because now I'll kind of like go into that too, now that we're talking about this. Um, One of her origin stories is that she's actually Thracian. She's a Thracian goddess, which means that she's one of the Titans. It is said that her parentage come from Perseus, the Titan Perseus. Um, in a couple of different versions, they don't know who her mother is. In a couple of versions, they do. One of them is Leto. Another one, it says that she has no mother. They just don't know who her mother is. Another one, it says that like it's just chaos and darkness. There's a couple different versions of her parentage, but the main most common one is like she is a daughter of Perseus, the Titan. And she's actually the last Titan, like and the only Titan to survive, like once Zeus takes over. She's actually like he gives her the key to Tartarus. I think that's another reason why like the keeper the keys comes forward and why that becomes so valid. Is because she is given the keys to Tartarus. She's also tied to Hercules later on, but when it comes to Zeus too, like he's so like he sings her praises because she comes to his aid and helps him. When it comes to like the war and things, and she sides with him, and he actually bestows upon her the power of heaven, earth, the sea, the underworld, the ability to decide if deities can procreate or not, the ability to decide if humans have the right to prosper and have harvest. Like he gives her, and the key to Tartarus, like he gives her so much power, and he sings her absolute praises. This is referenced in Hesiod's references this. This is where this really comes up. But I mean, she is her origin, like I said, she's a Titan, Thracian goddess. She comes over, she actually survives with she ends up being taken into the Greek pantheon and given so much power. Like she's more power than Hades and Poseidon. Like hands down, like more power than Hades, Poseidon, like ever we're getting. Okay, give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna double check the chat here really quick. I apologize. My asthma has not been happy. It got so cold in Minnesota in the last like 3 days so fast that it's insane. Does anybody have any questions at all? I don't know if I asked that. I don't see any in the chat, so okay. So also like in Greek mythology, she belongs to a group of deities and also known as the protectors, which gives her another level of power. They're also known as the oikos, or households. So they're known as the household protectors. They're usually alongside Zeus and Hermes. So she was actually very revered and honored in Greek culture. Like she was revered and honored. She was placed in the home. Typically, when offerings were given to her, they were placed outside of the doorway, and leftovers from sacred feasts and festivals, especially, were placed outside the doorway, as offerings to her and to honor her, and also to give offerings to her hounds. Because again, I'll go over that a little bit later. But her hounds are pretty important to her, and they've got their own myths. She was associated again with inside Greek culture by the 5th century BCE. She was really known as the goddess of magic and witchcraft. That's also where she starts to really start popping up as underworld ghost. Various animals like the dog, that's where her hounds really start to come in. Female intuition like childbirth and marriage really starts to pop in, and she still still gets to keep her prevalent place like at entrances and public places and things like that. And then it kind of starts like again, it starts to change. It's more of those ghosts, those spirits, those witchcrafts, the magic, the underworld. It's kind of the beginning of where you kind of start to see that transition to more of those like dark associations. And I think this is where we kind of start to get that like fear starts to come in. This is where she starts to get associated more with like evil spirits. They call to her to protect their home from evil spirits, but then they still fear her because of the evil spirits. So that actually personally just confuses me a little bit. But that becomes to kind of where she's really started to represent at that point. The ancient Greek poet, like I said, Hesiod noticed, he had noticed that she had received a ton of praise. And because of this, a lot of times sacrifices were made to her, because Zeus gave her so much praise. There was actually a well in Agora, in like the main like shopping center, that when it was excavated, they found bunch among infants' bones and human bones and things like that. But they found like over 100 dogs that were sacrificed and slit to her because she was that important. Because they recognized how much power she had, and how important she was, and all the different places that she could influence her life. Because like I said, super versatile goddess. They actually were sacred rites established to her within Greece. Those who usually practice the Eleusinian, I'm gonna forgive me for the pronunciation. I try so hard with this one. I've heard it a million times. It's hard for me. But the Eleusinian mysteries, which is literally like the most famous like secret religious rites in ancient Greece. It was literally Greece's like worst kept secret. Like it was supposed to be secret rites, but everybody knew about it. And at one point in time, I think pretty much everybody was a part of it in some way, shape, or form. But those who practiced it, they were taught secret magic that had to do with Hekate, specifically with medicines and poisons. She that is another thing that she's very known for is medicines and poisons. They would pay homage to her. They even had like a secret garden there that was dedicated to her and like all of her herbs and all of her plants. So practicing herbalism, if you do that, like she's a great deity to contact and to work with for that. Okay, and again, let's see. So alternate names that you might hear her reference to, because sometimes people like to cross and say that there are two different, like there are multiple different paths. The two main paths when it comes to deities is that it's all one deity that shows up at different aspects in different cultures. And then there's the other viewpoint where you look at it where each cult that's actually a separate entity, a separate deity. It's not like just a different facet. But if you look at her from the standpoint of like where was she represented in other cultures, where was she represented that way, she can also be seen as sometimes including Artemis and Selene and Persephone with her. They're both that like within Greek, when the Romans, trivia was one that was represented with her. Also Diana, especially like more towards Italy in that region. Trivia was known as the Triple Road in Romans. And the crossroads. So that's also why you see that come across. And then a lot of different other titles and epithets that she has, there's actually quite a few. But the short list that I have is apotropia, and that means that she turns away or protects. Syntharia, which is the earth or the underworld. Enodia, which is on the way, Theodosius, which is holding the keys. This form of her is really where you get that practice of keeping the keys, the keeping, and then her 9 keys, the keeping of her keys. This representation, that's where you get that a lot. There's also Chorotrophes, which she's the nurses of children. She's called on for that too, for children that are sick, especially children that are going through like a terminal illness and things like that. She can be pulled up for that. You also have Million, where she pulls up. There's a phosphorus, which means bringer or bearers of light. Because of that name, that epithet, I think that's another reason why we see her very frequently. She's almost always like she's got those torches. She's holding her 2 torches. She's lighting the way. She's the phosphorus. She's the light. She's the in front of. Sometimes you'll see her references as Soteria, which is the savior. There's a couple other on the list too that you can go over. I've touched on the triple goddess actually quite a bit. But when it comes to her, like I said, represented as the triple goddess, like typically in ancient times, she doesn't really get represented that way. She gets represented as the maiden with Artemis and some, sometimes represented as the virginal goddess. But that the triple goddess pops up in the mother where she represents all aspects in one. Like I said, it's with Robert Graves in The White Goddess. If you want to read it, it's a fantastic read. It's a great book. But he wasn't a scholar. He was a great poet. He was a great theologist and all of that. So I want you to keep that in mind when you're reading that. But again, super, super, it's still a great read. She does not appear in history in the Homeric epics at all, which I think is super interesting. Because that's kind of like some of the oldest writings that we have when it comes to like Greek mythology. Like I had touched on before, like she pops up in with the poet Hesiod. What they think is that she's most likely adopted into the Greek pantheon from the Carians of Asia Minor, because she does pop up there in like art and sculpture and on temples and like things like that and tablets. So she'll pop up there with the Carians of Asia Minor. So they really think that she really comes from there, especially with the most accepted view of her parentage being that it's Perseus and Asteria from the Titans, and the Thracians and things like that. So again, I think it's really interesting that she doesn't pop up in the Homeric epics, which Demeter's story is there, but then later she's a crucial role in Demeter's story. So I think that's super, super interesting. When it comes to like nowadays, sometimes you'll see her referenced as the Anima Mundi, which is the fiery spark that fuels all of the universe. That is a more modern view, more modern take. If you see that reference, a lot of time that does pop up more with the keeping of the keys. It is a more modern view. The ancients used to call on her for witchcraft and medicine. Like I said, with the Lucium mysteries, that's where we have proof of that. That's where we have writing of that. And at her temples, a lot of times they have the mortars and the grinding stones for medicine and herbs and herbal medicine. Let's see. So she was on, like I said, she doesn't pop up in the Homeric epics, so she's unknown to Homer. She first appears in writing in the 7th century BCE in Hesiod's Theogony. She's very different from like any other underworld goddess of witchcraft, which she eventually becomes. Because she's actually, like I said, right away, like she's praised. It's actually like here, I have it actually quoted in the study guide. So it's whom Zeus' son, the Kronos, honored above all. Hesiod's Hekate has a share of earth, sea, sky, and provide aid to all mortals, kings, warriors, athletes, shepherds, fishermen, mothers, children, and so on. Like that's a massive expansive of territory and power that he gave her. And then by the 5th century, that's like I said, when she became a lot more darker. I've touched on her origin a couple times. Okay, and then in iconography and symbols, around 430 BCE, that's when you start to see her kind of like in her figures start to show up as a triplicate. But again, it's not from the standpoint of mother, maiden, crone. It's because she can It's because of the crossroads, it's because of the boundaries. Because even like in ancient times, like typically if you came to a crossroads, there usually is like a pole in the ground that had the three stakes to pointing of where like the directions of where you can go. So like it's culturally also like a representation for them as well. Like she represents the crossroads. So to have those three there, that's really why she took on that form. Is identified like with the polis. She's identified like with holding that torches to light the way because that's what she represents, and she's lighting the way to the crossroads and like down the roads. So as a triple goddess, like icon wise and symbol wise, she shows up that way, but because of what she represents, not for that mother maiden crone aspect. You also have, like I said, I have some pictures of the study guide. There's other vases of there's other art. Like she does pop up in a couple different places. In mythology, some of the stories that she pops up in. So one big one too is the birth of Zeus. She appears in that one. Hekate appears in some versions of the birth of Zeus. The myth tells of how Titus Kronos, Zeus's father, swallowed each of his children as soon as they were born, fearing that they would someday overthrow him. But when his last child, Zeus, was born, Kronos' wife, Rhea, decided to save the newborn's life at all costs. So she dressed a stone in swaddling clothes for Kronos to swallow while she hid the real Zeus away. In most traditions, it was Rhea who brought Kronos the stone for him to swallow. But there's actually one version, which is depicted in the Eastern frieze on the Temple of Hekate at Lagina, that shows Rhea actually sent Hekate to give Kronos the stone. So she pops up there one time. We have a depiction of her with the birth of Zeus. I mean, it also makes sense. She is a Titan. She is there. It would also make sense why Zeus would love and adore her and praise her so much. Like if he's told that story, if that's what he's like, that's what he knows, and like it would make a lot of sense for that connection as well. Um, when the Olympians were attacked by the giants as well, there was monsters offering of the earth goddess. They were okay. Some people consider them monsters, but I don't. She sided with the Olympians. So during that war, she actually sided with them. She used her torches to fight. She laid low. She made sure that the scene was represented, and she's represented in ancient art on Hecate's temple and Lagina, like being there, being a part of there. Like it's a very clear image of her being there when that war was happening, like when that attack was happening, when that fighting was happening, like she was a part of that. Like she sided with the Olympians. That's why, again, like she's the only Titan to remain after Zeus's rule. She shows up again, like I said, I touched on either earlier in the abduction of Persephone. In one version, Hecate makes the appearance. So when Persephone is abducted, she's the only one that actually hears her cries and witnesses and sees this happen outside of Helios. If you were at my Persephone class, there's another version where there's actually a nymph there. But in this version, like it's Hecate. She's in her cave, and she sees this. She sees what happens. She hears it. Helios also sees it, obviously being the sun. And when her Demeter is wandering the earth and she's searching for her, like Hecate really starts to feel for her. And she really starts to want to help her. So she actually decides to like go and defy Zeus and defy Hades. And she's like, no, I'm gonna tell her what I saw. I'm gonna tell her what I heard. And she goes to Persephone, goes to Demeter and lets her know like what happened to her daughter and that she was taken. And then she does also not only lets her know, she grabs her two torches, and she is the one that's literally there, like comforting her, holding her hand, guiding her through the light to go bring her to go get her daughter. In some versions, Demeter actually doesn't go down with her. It's just actually Hecate who goes down and actually guides Persephone back up. But in each version, like it's Hecate who's doing that. It's her who's being there. She's providing that comfort. She's providing that protection. She's providing that guidance. I also like this representation as well, and like this placement of her in this story because you have Helios and then you have Hecate, who anciently is attached to the moon. So you have the sun and the moon working together, observing everything that's going on Earth, and then defying the gods. So like I really like that representation as well, and I think it's a big reason why she's also in this story. Another reason is there actually is a couple different versions. I don't fully agree with this, but there is like two different versions of her origin story where Hecate is actually the daughter of Demeter and Zeus. If that were to be true, Persephone and Hecate would be sisters then. So I think that's another reason why she's also represented there. And then it's also like being that boundary, being the gatekeeper of the underworld and what Persephone's role is going to become. Those two having that connection. I think it's fabulous that she's here. I think that's another reason why she's represented here. I use these two together all the time. If you weren't at my Persephone class, Persephone is one of my, like, she is my patron deity. One of, like, I work with her very closely. I have for 15 years. She is with me all the time, every day. I work with her a lot. And I work with Hekate with her a lot too. They get along super, super well. Another mythology, well, you'll see her pop up. It is Hecate and the polecat. So this explains like kind of how she ends up represented with the polecat, which is also known aka a weasel, if you didn't know that. Polecat is a weasel. And it's one of her sacred animals and symbols that you'll see pop up. In this version, there's one version where it's about the birth of the hero Hercules. So this is another version where she's going to aid and provide protection and be like, I don't agree with what another deity is doing, and I'm going to step in and I'm going to stop this from happening. So since Hercules was a son of Zeus, and his mortal lover Alcmene, Zeus's wife Hera got super, super jealous, and she wanted to prevent the birth from happening. So she sent one of her daughters, Aletheia, the goddess of childbirth, and one of the Moirai of the Fates, to hold Alcmene's womb shut. So Aletheia literally like sat outside her bedroom, like where she was giving birth, legs crossed, her fingers like latched, and like her womb shut, which literally like magically made it to where like Alchemy's womb stayed shut and she wasn't able to give birth. So like she was in labor for like days, like in intense pain, like intense pain. So Alchemy's handmaiden Galinthius, fearing that her matron, like that she was like gonna be tricked, like she was gonna die. Like she literally was like, okay, I need to figure out some way to like go about this and like help with this. And so what she did is she's like, she announced the child had been born, that like Hercules had already been born, which like startled Aletheia, and she like startled, she moved, which made it to where Hercules could be born. It made it to where Alcheme's womb opened. It allowed for Hercules to be born. And as a punishment for tricking the gods, Goliathus was actually turned into a weasel polecat. And Hecate was like, this is ridiculous. I no, like I don't like this. I don't like her being treated like this. So she took pity on her and she actually brought her into her home and like made her actually a sacred attendant and a familiar for her. So that is the version. Another version is actually that the polecat is actually was a witch named Gale, who had, I can't find details on what the sexual perversions were, but apparently they must have been pretty bad because she's very sexually perverse, and the gods had to punish her, and they punished her by turning her into a weasel. And then Hecate took pity on her and brought her in and made her one of her attendants. So there's two different stories really to that. Those are the stories for that myth and where you'll heal her and see her pop up. So when it comes to like ancient temples, she does have a couple. She has many temples. There were some in Athens. She has one. She's guarding the entrance of the Acropolis. She's also has a temple that's located in Lagina, which is a town in the region of Caria. It's in the southwest coast of Asia Minor, which is in modern day now is Turkey. It's a huge temple. It's got a bunch of decorations on her tablets. There's where the priests and priestesses were. There are other sites also dedicated to her in Argos and Aegina. In ancient times, they had a lot of rituals and festivals and holidays honoring her that involved foods and offerings, especially fish and meat and eggs and bread and wine. And a lot of times they would honor her by sacrificing dogs and puppies to her. That was a very common sacrifice for her to be given to her. And in Athens, there's evidence that Hecate's worship also was during their new moon festivals. That she would be lavished with a feast called a deep, deep Depena, which is made of her favorite foods, which is eggs, bread, cheese, and dog meat. So that's again dogs being sacrificed. There's also known of having like exotic, like orgy, sensual rituals in other parts of the Greek world and at her temple in Lagina. There's also the ritual that is at her temple in Lagina. I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation. Clido Clida, which is involved the carrying of her sacred keys, which like what we have gathered from text, like it's literally a sacred key to be able to go and unlock and open the underworld, and unlock and open the keys to yourself. Is a more of a modern view of her. In ancient times, it was literally the key to the underworld. But again, in some cultures, some religions, and a way a lot of us actually view it now is the underworld actually isn't like hell in a place. It's actually like your shadow work. It's your inner soul. It's where you go to get your answers. So like there's that version of it as well. Let's see. I'm gonna jump into the chat here quick. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, let's see. Let me jump in the chat. Let's see. Will this and the Morgon be? Yes, they both will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. Again, I just don't know when. The videos have to be reviewed and then they go up, but they will get uploaded to the YouTube channel. So does she help a severely disabled child and adult with it? I mean, I don't see why she couldn't help with that. Like, I don't see why she couldn't. She's there for protection. She's there for guidance. She's there for, I mean, when I get to the wheel here in a little bit, she's there for like fate and all of that. The same author write the bit on Hecate's temple, and that version of Zeus's first story. Yes, honey. From my understanding. Maybe different, but from my understanding, from what I've gathered, yes. When I've pieced together the traces. Oh, thank you so much for being here. What tarot card might represent Hekate? I will get to that when I get to correspondences. Okay, so there's other places where she pops up in text. She pops up on some of ancient Greek papyri. She's also on the Chatelaine oracles, which are mystical texts between the 3rd and 6th century CE. So she pops up there as well. And again, when it comes to modern day, I've really touched on this in neo-paganism. I don't think I'm going to break that down anymore. I've really I've touched on that quite a bit through this on how it's very that's a very more modern thing for her. Okay, so now we're at correspondences. So correspondences, if you haven't been to one of my classes before, what they are how you connect to her. They are things that you put on your altar, things you put in rituals, things you put in spells, things you carry around with you on your daily life, things you put around your home. They're literally just symbols and ways to connect to her, to connect to her energy, to connect to her archetype. If you don't know things about archetype, I did a very, very, very detailed class and breakdown of that. You can go watch that on YouTube, and that will help you know how to connect to that energy and connect to her in that way. So correspondences for her crystals are going to be black tourmaline, black obsidian, hematite, red jasper, pretty much anything that's black and red for protection. My biggest ones that I have with her, biggest success, I should say. Black tourmaline, black obsidian, red jasper. Also selenite and moonstone because she is a goddess of the moon. So pulling those two and tying her back to that and like her ancient aspect of that. I also love to throw those two in with her. Correspondence again, she's the goddess of the moon, magic, wisdom. Her zodiac signs that she would be attached to are going to be Aries, Capricorn, and Scorpio. She's attached to the moon, Pluto, and sometimes you'll see Saturn. Days of the week are going to be Monday and Saturday. There is celebrations. Some people do Samhain. There are other sacred days for her as well as August 13th and then November 30th. Also the dark moon and full moons and new moons. Colors are going to be black and silver. I've also had red attached to her greatly as well. Numbers are going to be 3 and 9. Herbs are going to be lavender. She loves lavender. She absolutely loves lavender. Dandelion and monkship. Gemstones, again, like I said, I've touched on that already, so I'm not going to do that. Animals, dogs, sometimes rabbits and hares, sheep, skunks. I've also seen snakes. I've seen a dragon on a rare occasion, but I kind of touched on this yesterday. It seems to be if a deity is ever attached, like a triple goddess, or is a very like primordial old deity, usually a dragon is attached because a dragon's a very primordial entity. Let's see. what am I missing? The tarot card that would be attached to her is going to be the wheel, for obvious reasons. You will also be able to have the moon card, the moon tarot card be attached to her as well, because she is a representation of the moon. Um, I also personally feel like she can also be attached to the death card because she is a goddess of the underworld and goddess of transformation. And I absolutely love the death card. The death card is all about transformation and rebirth. And I feel like she's very, very attached to that card as well. The tower card as well. I've seen that attached to her because it's the ability to literally like tear everything down, bring everything down in your life that's no longer serving you, and rebuild it back up. So that's another card that I can see associated to her as well. One of the most famous symbols that you'll see now is going to be the triple moon I see associated with her. You have her triple formed statue. You almost always see her in that triple formed statue. Her torch, I rarely, in almost every single art, imagery, archaeology, I rarely ever see her without a torch. The key to the other world, you almost always see her with the key. The serpent labyrinthine, which is part of her wheel. You always almost see her with her hounds and her dogs as well. And then you will also see the polecat, the weasel that'll pop up, and then the um, ceremonial knife as well, and dagger. You'll also see that associated as a symbol with her as well. In the study guide, I broke down like why each thing is associated with her. So if you would like to know, that will break it down in super, super detail for you. I also put in the study guide like her specific sigils. If you would like to work with sigils and you work with sigils, I do have those in there. Why snakes are associated with her. A big reason is snakes are represented mainly for transformation, rebirth, regrowth, shedding your skin. They also, like a lot of times when you see them in symbols, they'll be head to tail, they'll be like fully representing like a full cycle. A lot of times snakes are also attached to dragons, which again, primordial. And a lot of times they're attached, serpents are almost always attached to divine feminine energy. So that's another reason why. If you want a really detailed description for why, I did put that in the study guide for you. So one of the number one symbols that you'll see with her is Hekate, Hecate's wheel. Hecate's wheel is also known as the Strophilos of Hekate, and it's a very ancient Greek symbol, and it's used to represent the moon goddess. It's also used in Wicca still, and Dianic traditions as well. What it symbolizes is not really changed honestly that much. It's been pretty consistent. Um, the one bit is now because like in Wicca neo-paganism, it can be attached like the triple goddess. Because it's like that visual maze. It's also like three distinct different worlds that are in it that connect it to the center. But it represents like all, so many different things, but infinite wisdom. It represents rebirth and renewal. It relates to all the different transitions in your life that you would be going through. Typically, it's a six-spoke wheel. And each spoke also represents something different. It represents six different directions: north, south, east, west, up, and down. And it was actually first discovered on cursed tablets in the 5th century BCE. So that was where it was actually being used, was actually for protection. Sometimes it was also used as a good luck talisman and for guidance. It represents the constant moving of life, the worlds of life, the labyrinth of life, the journey to inner discovery that you have to walk through in order to transform and evolve. And again, it has the three different lines in it to connect the three different roads. It also can represent your path to knowledge, protection, the three different realms as well, the earth, sea, and sky, which are the three different realms that she held domain over, which in ancient times, another reason why she was seen as like a triple goddess, because she did hold domain over those three different realms. And again, with it being also a circle, it's connection to the moon and your influence over moon and moon magic and your intuition, because remember, your moon is always attached to your intuition, your subconscious. The next big representation that you'll see for her is Hecate's key. This does originate in ancient Greece. It is mentioned, like she is referenced with a key in like ancient times. But being like keeper of like the nine keys, the multiple keys, like that is a more modern thing. So in ancient times, one of her original origin titles and role was Theodokis, which means keeper of the keys, and that stretches back like over 2,000 years. This is pre-Christianity. It's written down in ancient spells and ancient rituals, even like in the Louisiana's mysteries. It's in a lot of different philosophical texts that she's referenced with that name. And it's referenced to the key to the underworld, like being the one that's holding the key to the passage between those two worlds. And it's as a gatekeeper. It's between those boundaries, those liminal spaces, where that key is referenced. And it's actually referenced in the Orphic hymn to Hekate. I have it in the study guide if you want to read it. But it's referenced at the bottom and the last line, where she's referenced as that. So that's also like ancient times. She is referenced as it, and this is where she was worshipped as that. So this is also why I think it is totally okay for this to happen. And I touched on this before because we changed it to match what we need it to now, and there's nothing wrong with that. DD practice is going to change with the culture. It's going to change with society. It's going to change to what they need, and what you need, and so it to me it makes perfect sense. But now to modern times, Hecate's nine keys. This became something that kind of changed and morphed. You really I feel like a lot of it pulled from Robert Graves' White Goddess. But Hecate's nine keys, if you look in the study guide, like I do have a great visual in there that breaks down what it all represents. But it really is like these nine different keys that you go into within yourself to unlock, to evolve, and to be able to actually get to your true purpose, your true soul. Like it's a guidance into you. It's a guidance into yourself. It's another way to do like shadow work. It's a way to gather wisdom. um it's the belief that like Hecate holds the key to all understanding, all knowledge of all the realms, and she has the keys that are concealing that from you. And if you work with her and you go through these keys, those doors will be unlocked. You will be allowed to have that knowledge. You will be allowed to have that spiritual enlightenment. Um, and you will be able to dive into depths of self exploration and your own consciousness and magic and transformation that like you've never experienced before. So another really really deep belief with this that like you also need to attach to is like when you go on down this path and you experience her as the keeper of these nine keys, it is super super crucial, like very like deep in the belief that like you understand when you're going down this path, like she represents a super primal role as Anima Mundi, which is the soul of the world. Like she is considered like the absolute soul, like energy of the world. It's similar to me. It's a similar representation of Tiamat in Babylonian and Mesopotamian religions, and like who she is as a deity. And like so she's really represented as that. Like that's a very like core. Like you're sitting at that. Like she is literally the soul of the world. You are coming to be able to access use these keys to get access to everything, literally everything. She holds the keys that unlock the chains that bind us from our healing, our wholeness, our magic, our medicine, our mystery. And so like I said, like each key is for something different. There's a key for acceptance, there's a key for courage and compassion and pain that you're going to go through while you're discovering yourself. And I absolutely love that key because I think it's absolutely crucial. I think it's something people forget about. They think that enlightenment and transformation and healing is just all light and fluffy. It's actually incredibly messy. It's super dark. It's super painful. I mean, I just went through DBT, and one of the first things that they teach you even before you start orientation is like your house is going to burn down first before like we can do anything else, before you can heal. Like you're going to have to experience like your entire world burning to the ground first before like you get to that transformation. The next key is the key of suffering, which you find in your healing. The key of peace, the key of wisdom, And then there's the key of witchcraft, as well as thrown in there. So when, like I said, if you're going to go down this path, I really, really recommend going to the website. I have it linked in the resources, reading the book, working with the material that goes with this path. This path, like I said, it's a brilliant path. It's a great way to work with her, especially for shadow work. And if you're really, really ready to dive really deep into shadow work, it's a great way to use her. You don't have to be Wiccan to use her this way. I'm not Wiccan. Have I studied Wicca? Yes, but I am not Wiccan. It's not a path that I practice. But I have used her in that way, and I absolutely love it. To know if she's calling you, um, number 13 will pop up a lot everywhere. You'll see it everywhere. Like you will literally see it everywhere. There's going to be absolutely nothing that you can do about it. You'll hear random dogs barking or howling, especially at night, and it's literally coming from nowhere. Like you literally can't pinpoint like where it's come, like the direction it's coming from. Like there shouldn't be dogs howling or barking because there's no dogs around. Like you will literally hear it. Sometimes not even just at night. She's she's not very subtle. Like in my experience, she's not very subtle. She's another deity that's not very subtle with her signs. She's not gonna like be like wean you into it and like be very gentle. She's gonna be very abrupt. Like she's gonna let you know that like she's calling to you. So it may happen during the day if you ignore her. If you keep seeing her symbols repeatedly, like a key or the crossroads or a torch or a dagger or even her wheel, like if they're just popping up random, like you see her all the time, like that's not something you usually see. If you're suddenly drawn to graveyards and cemeteries, like if you suddenly really want to go inside graveyards and cemeteries, she's the keeper of that. Like she holds that liminal space. If you are, I highly recommend, I never, ever, ever go to a graveyard or a cemetery without a gift. Not for the spirits that are there, but for the actual graveyard and cemetery, for the actual space, for the earth, for that sacred container that is holding all of those ancestors in that space. So I recommend definitely doing that. And again, like that's also another way to honor her. She likes those offerings at those boundaries, at those thresholds, at those doorways. Um, if you have any type of spiritual experience that has to do with the crossroads, she's calling to you. Anything else to do with the crossroads. If you're new, if you're really new to this craft, this is something new to you, I bet you she's calling to you. I personally don't think I guess I haven't talked to any like everybody, but those that I know that work with deities and have done deity works and have gone on this path, she's reached out to, they've looked into, they've heard about her in some way, shape, or form, or they've worked with her. I also don't know anybody that has had a bad experience with her either. Um, Hekate also will really come into the lives of people and witches that are pregnant. I'm going to be going through that transition or dying. That you're coming to the end of your life or you're around somebody who's coming to the end of their life. So just be aware of that. Animals will start to come around, especially dogs, black dogs, you'll see very often. You'll start to see that super, super often. And then if all of a sudden spirits start to communicate with you, and that's not something that typically happens, or if that amplifies, because she does hold that liminal space. Okay. So when it comes to working with Hekate, there's a lot of different ways that you can work with her. Pronouncing her name right, which I touched on before. So the Hekate or Hekate, you can do it either way, Hekate or Hekate. I've heard it either one. But just make sure that you're pronouncing it right. A lot of people, like I said, they don't emphasize the Heka. It's the ka that really needs to be like emphasized. Making sure like if you have an altar space, you work with altars, dedicating one altar to her or adding her to your altar. You can do that in many different ways with any of the correspondences that I've given you. Adding offerings to your altar if you work in an offer for her, and also doing offerings for her in general. Like I said, if you have like a big family meal or just even just a regular family meal, like any type of meal and you have leftovers, if you put those leftovers outside your doorway, outside your boundaries, outside your threshold, and leave them for her hounds, like she absolutely would adore that. Doing rituals at crossroads, sometimes that can be hard to find in this day and age. I don't really have a problem because I live in central Minnesota and we have a lot of dirt back roads, so there's a lot of crossroads that happen. But it's a three-way crossroads. Those are the most powerful where you want to be, is where you have those three-way crossroads. If you can't get to one physically, create one, draw one. Use something physically to make a three-way crossroads in your space. Like you have the ability to do that. You have the ability to create your sacred container in whatever way that you need to. So you can create your crossroads that you need to go to. Um, any type of work with dogs, canine care, like she loves it. Going to work at an animal shelter, donating time, donating supplies, like anything like that. There is a celebration that's known as Hecate's Supper. In the study guide, I did go through like literally step by step how to host one if you would like to. I'm not going to do that a little bit later. I'll go into a little bit more details on what it is. But typically it's really just a fun and traditional way. A lot of people do it during Samhain. And around that time, when I've done it and like had that incorporated in my life, I usually do it on August 13th or like November 30th. Because those are sacred days to her, in ancient times. And so you host that feast for her. You make sure you include lavender, honey, eggs, and garlic in your dishes, and red wine and mead and meat, red meat. But like I said, in the study guide further down, I do have literally step by step how to host one, like what the ambiance should be, what the decorations should be, what the food should be, like all of that, what the prayer should be. Like I have it literally step by step in here for you. Studying herbs and herbalism because she's really, really attached to that. Because there was Hecate's garden at Cloacus that they had for her, especially poisons, like poisonous herbs. Be careful though. Make sure you're careful. I don't want you to hurt yourself or die. That's not what I'm asking you to do, but you can study them and work with them in a safe way. Dark moon rituals are a great way, but like I've said, you can use any phase, full moon and new moon. Spirit work in a cemetery. If you work with spirits and any type of work, ancestral work inside cemeteries, like I said, that's a sacred space to her. She holds that threshold. It's a liminal space. She's like, that's again, I recommend bringing a gift with for the actual cemetery, the actual graveyard, the actual space. Offerings at your door, which I've talked about. Locating the dog star. So there's actually Sirius. It's actually known to be attached to her because the dogs, and honoring that, putting that as part of your astrology, adding it to your altar and your symbols. You can work with any of her allies that she's ever worked with, like Persephone and Demeter and Diana and anybody else. Doing things in 13s, and the number 13, that's a super sacred number to her because of the lunar cycle and her being attached as a goddess of the moon. Menstrual magic. If you haven't worked with that before, wait until I teach a class on that. If you have worked with it before, you should know how to do that. But this is a great time to do that because of all the different phases of the woman that she can represent, especially if you choose to represent her as the triple goddess as a whole. When it comes to her as well, you can do divination. Tarot is a good way to connect to her, but any form of divination, honestly. I've used fire scrying very often with her, and mirror scrying, but that's for me, mirror scrying gets me to the underworld a lot easier. And that's why I like to use her with mirror scrying. There's also a sacred tea and incense that's known with her that you can make and use and know. And you can have tea with her and like give her her own cup and you have yours, or you can leave it just as an offering as well. But literally, however you choose to honor her, however you choose to work with her, whatever calls and pulls to you, just make sure you're doing it in reverence and respect. So just make sure that you have the information, you know what you're doing, you're coming to at her in absolute reverence and respect. Um, so a little bit more detail on Hekate night or supper at the crossroads. It started in ancient Greek times. It's a very elegant and sacred meal that's dedicated to her, and at the crossroads. It's a yeah, it's a party, it's a meal. Most of her cults that like Elysium Mysteries, the one on Sothric Island, Lagina, the Lagina Temple, they did them all the time. It's also known as Hecate's Deathanon, which is also like a monthly feast that was also done for her. So there's the ones that are done on her sacred day, and then there's the monthly feast as well, which is usually held on the last day of the lunar month. And it was usually held so that they could honor and help Hecate lead any lost souls or vengeful souls actually to the underworld. Because they didn't want the vengeful souls, the ones that wanted revenge or didn't know why they were dead and were just wandering. They didn't want them coming into their homes. So they would host this feast and leave the offerings and leftovers from the feast outside on the doorstep, so that she would come and protect their home so they wouldn't come in. So that is where this all started, and then it's carried over. We do it modern day times to help honor her at Samhain. Hecate night was when they did it, like the big traditional was typically on November 16th. I've also seen it written in documentation on August 13th as well. which is a day in ancient Greek times that was known to honor the crossroads specifically. And then Samhain, because it is when the veil is the thinnest. That's the biggest reason why I think the Hekate supper pops up on Samhain as well. Personally, I don't do Samhain. I do Morrigan on Samhain. And again, I do her November 30th or the 16th, the night of the crossroads, the night for her hound. And again, in the study guide, I literally broke it down. Everything that you need to do. One thing that I would make sure to remember to purify and cleanse afterwards if you choose to do this, and because in case any, negative entities, vengeful entities do manage to make their way in, like you purify afterwards, and you get them like they're no longer in your threshold. Okay, I'm gonna jump in the chat here quick, see if you guys have any questions. And if you guys have any questions at all, you can definitely ask too. Do you know if there's a good Dark Goddess Tarot or Oracle card decks? No, honey, I haven't found one I like yet. I have been really frustrated about that. I have not found one that I like yet because they always slip in other deities that I don't consider dark goddesses, or they slip in other entities, or I don't like the artwork because they depict them in a very like negative, like evil, patriarchal way. I have not found one that I like. If you find one you like, please let me know because I've been looking. Michelle, are you leaving? Or is that for something else? I don't know. What kind of keys? Skeleton keys? I mean, yeah, you can use literally any type of key. Like right now, the altar that I have for us to be using for me to be invoking her for you today is literally my house key. I literally took it off my house, my house keys right now, because I would like to make sure, and I'm reinforcing her at my threshold. She's one of the deities that I use in my sigil work to protect my home. She's one of the main three that I use to protect my home. So she's already attached to that. You can literally use any key you want. Do coyotes count as dogs? Because we have a bunch of heck. So I don't know if they count as dogs. Do they genealogically and count as dogs? I don't know. I might have to look that up afterwards. I will say though, typically, almost every single time, like they're pretty specific that like the dogs that she is with and the hounds that she's with are black. When you see them. And I'm gonna go into more detail on them right after this. That's the next thing that I'm gonna touch before I do like the random musings that I have left so that I make sure that we have enough time so you guys can meet her. I'm going to go, okay. If I'm going to a graveyard lately, I would definitely pay attention to that. I have a lot of dogs I hear and a lot of them. Yeah, Hekate really is talking to you then. The way the witch's circle. Okay, I'll check that one out. Check out I'm guessing that's a tarot deck. Where do I leave the offering? Anywhere that you want. I usually leave it at the entrance. Like right at the threshold at the entrance. And that's where I see most people say to leave it too, and where I've seen other practitioners leave it. But I feel like there's a lot of practitioners and a lot of witches that they go to the graveyard to do work there and spell work there. They're not going there to pay homage ancestry thing. They're literally just going there for spell work and stuff and rituals, and they're not honoring the earth in that sacred container and their sacred places that they're in. So that's why I brought it up too, to make sure to thank that sacred space, that sacred container you're in. Because if they're not going there to honor their ancestors, they're typically not going to be going there with any type of gift whatsoever, because they're not going to a specific gravestone to leave something to offer an ancestor, but they're still going to that space to pull on all that energy. And I feel like the thanks needs to be there and needs to be honored. What foods honor her other than tea? So well, I mean, I don't really like the fact that you called it a dumb dinner. But so when it comes to her Hekate supper and dinner and festival, so you want to have red meats, you want to have bread. She likes garlic, so having garlic incorporated into the meal. Eggs are a big favorite of hers as well. She likes wine and mead, so having beer and wine involved. So that would be a big thing to have involved. Yeah, Michelle, I definitely think she wants to work with you. Like she's talking to you a lot. You have a lot of things that you've said in that chat that are definitely part of that. But yes, so if you choose to be a part of the supper and do the supper, I would absolutely love it. But please, again, come to it from a place of reverence and respect and honor. It's not a you do this because you're told to do this and you should do it. You do it because it's actually something that you feel pulled to do. It's a way that you feel to actually honor her, and you come to it from reverence and respect when it comes to that. Any practice that you do with any deity. Okay, so when it comes to kind of some other random things and random musings that I have for her, make sure like you all sometimes hear Hecate's hoard. That's a reference to her followers. It's not like anything like scary or something. I think it's a patriarchal term. I don't really like it, but you will see that references as well. A lot of people will reference witches as her chosen people. If you feel that way, that's awesome to you. I don't feel like witches are anybody's chosen people. I feel like anybody can choose to go on this path if they want to. It's just up to their soul and what they would like to do. But some do view it that way. When it comes to Hecate and women, she has a really strong history with women, especially with those that are deemed witches. And a lot of times you'll see those of us that are deemed witches, we end up in, the feminist movement. We end up, doing a lot of work when it comes to that. And we want to really like destroy the patriarchy and we want to fight this disempowerment of women. So she's been pulled throughout centuries. She's been pulled up, and her archetype's been pulled up to be used to help women and protect women. I've seen her used at, I personally, this is not the deity that I go to for my activism work, but I know others that use her for activism work, and that they use her for protection and for women. And then again, because she holds that space at childbirth, that's a huge reason why she's deemed there, for women as well. And then she's got a very strong attachment to the eternal witches Circe and Medea, which is another reason why she's tied to women. A lot of women look to Circe, the witch Circe, for like a lot of inspiration. And she's been a symbol throughout feminism for a lot of years. And then I think it's also another reason with her and women, like she appears to us all so differently and in so many different aspects. And ancient wise, she, had multiple realms that she covered. And then modern times, she covers like the mother maiden crone aspect if you choose to work with her in that way. Um, a couple of the forms I was going to touch on when it comes to like seeing her in a triple form. You'll see her with Artemis and Diana sometimes. You'll also see her with Persephone and Demeter. And then sometimes you'll see her with Selene and Artemis as well. So you'll see that happen as well. Like I said, she's been associated with the moon for a really long time. I just want to make sure I'm triple checking my study guide to make sure I didn't miss anything about her. I'm pretty sure I touched on this quite a few times, but if I didn't, she does show up in the Greek magical papyri, which is an ancient text combining Greek, Roman, and Egyptian deities. And it portrays like what their purposes are, spells that are attached to them, curses that are attached to them, how they were honored, and it indicates like how they were viewed. This papyri is one of the first times where we see her shown as a triple moon goddess, where we actually see her attached to the moon. In the Shelladen oracles, which are earlier texts even, she's seen as the world's soul. So this is also where I think that Keeper the Keys pulls from as well, why I think it's super valid and why it can be used that way. Let's see. Maiden Mother Crone, modern traditions. So like I said, touch on the keeping of the keys, the institute that is attached to as well as the Kavina Institute. If I didn't say that before, just so that you know, the Kavina Institute, that is where that comes from. It's the representation of her medicine, her keys, her plants, her torches, her wheels. They teach all of that. They have classes and things like that. I have a link in the study guide for the resources. If you choose to work with her during the full moon, make sure you're specifically focusing on clearing out your past, releasing fears, and opening yourself to new possibilities. And you can, like I said, you can work with her in multiple different ways. Um, And I have a lot of different ways in the study guide. So if you guys look through the study guide when you get a chance, I put specific different rituals and different ways to invoke her. So if you want to work with her for self-discovery, I have a way for you to do that. If you want to work with her for a way to banish self-hatred, I have a way for you to do that. If you want to work with her in a way as keeper of the keys, I have a way for you to start doing that. That's a very long journey. So I didn't put all of that in there for you because that's something you need to go on your own. If you want to look at like call to her for guidance on where to go, like as in like a decision, being at a crossroads, fate, anything like that, I have a way for you to work with her in that because that's a completely different way to look at her. Some people like don't consider her a goddess of fates. I do. I know there are quite a few other practitioners that do as well. She holds like her main symbol is the wheel. Like it's that wheel represents that inner discovery. That inner discovery, the purpose of inner discovery is to figure out what your soul contract is, what your fate is, like how to use your fate to get to your destiny. Because I view fate as a movement of flow of energy, and fate is like the decision of your free the decisions you make within your free will to get to your destiny, to get to your purpose, your soul contract to fulfill those things. And so like I like her being that wheel, and like I don't see how there's any way she can't be associated to fate and guidance and being at the crossroads. And then her being a keeper of liminal spaces, it just makes perfect sense. So I do have a way for you to do that. You can use her for blessings and protection and healing. So I have ways for the study guide for you to work with her in that way. You can also call to her specifically just for the underworld and just for you to have connection to the underworld. The reason why I call in the underworld, the reason why anybody I feel should be calling on the underworld onto the underworld and using her in the capacity is rebirth. Transformation can't happen without rebirth. You can't be reborn without first dying. A death has to happen first in order for you to be reborn, for you to evolve, for you to awaken, for you to reach enlightenment, whatever the verbiage is you use for it, a death has to happen first. So calling to the underworld, calling to that energy, like that's when you would really want to use her in that sense and in that way. I have quite a few different invocations in there for you also to work with her. Again, if you haven't been to my classes before, I highly recommend you work with a deity for about a year before you try to fully invoke or summon a deity. You can use them in prayer. You can call the energy as an archetype energy into your life. You can pray to them. You can talk to them. You can have conversations with them. But to like fully invoke them and summon them, please try to wait a year. But it's your path. You make your choice. You do what you want to do. It is totally up to you. But that is my recommendation because you need to come to them from the absolute deepest place of understanding, reverence, and respect when you do that and when you go down that path. The amount of energy that is going to come through you and flow through you when you invoke and summon is so great. You need to have the utmost amount of reverence, respect, and understanding. Your homework assignment in the study guide is your shadow work prompts. I did these specifically for letting go because you need to fully let go and experience the radical acceptance to experience death, rebirth, and transformation. And I've touched in study guides and other classes. I think I've really had you guys work on your feminine energy for a while. I want you to work on this one is specifically for letting go. So I put 3 prompts in there. They're pretty detailed. If you haven't been to my class before and you don't know how to do shadow work, please go and watch my class on YouTube on shadow work so that you have a very detailed understanding on how to do that. And if you ever have any questions, you can definitely send me a PM. I'm always willing to help. If I don't answer right away, please just bump your message. I get so many messages that I might just, it literally just might have slipped through. I'm not intentionally trying to ignore anybody. So please just bump your message. I had things in the study guide also for you to specifically call to her wheel because you can call to her wheel itself. So the wheel can give you answers on what's showing up on the different spokes within the point. And also you can use the wheel as a focal point for meditation when it comes to crossroads, fate, guidance, making decisions. So you also have that as an option for a focal point when it comes to meditation. I also have a binding spell in here for you if you do work with that and you'd like to, and you would like to try it with Hekate, because she's great for protection. Binding is a great way to protect. Some people don't like to bind; they think it's painful. I don't. But if you'd like to, I have that in there for you. And a couple other rituals again for guidance and prayers and charging when it comes to her. At the end of the study guide, I have all my resources that I have, all my resources cited. If you want to go and read the actual ancient text, the ancient quotations, the actual full ancient myths, go and look at the primary resources, go and look at that, and you'll be able to find and read the entire story. I also have resources in here to help you learn more about her, help you learn how to work with her. I have ones that are audio and ones that you can read. So definitely go and check those out if she's calling to you. I did put more resources in here than I normally do because she is a big deity and she is very popular. And she comes from a lot of different ways. Okay, so I think I did good on time. I'm so proud. I was so worried I was not going to fit this in on time. So any questions, any comments, anything that you guys want to discuss or go over before I have you guys meet her, before I call her in for you guys? Okay, let me see. I'm gonna jump into the chat too. What food? What is this? Do I see an image? Oh, that's really cool. I like that drawing. Where is the study guide? Did somebody send it? Yes, they did. Thank you for sending it. Okay. Can I email you for the information? Yes.
Yeah, I'm still not. I'm the one that's not in the group. I had to ask you yesterday for the information when you had to give more information on the goddess Morgan.
Oh yeah. Did I give you my email or do you need it again?
No, you gave it to me. I believe I sent you an email. I'm not sure if it went through though.
I may
So
not have, I haven't checked my email yet today, so it's highly possible it did.
okay, so when you were saying that you're gonna add more info and the audio would be great, especially with dealing with my son. So if there's anything you can add, that'll be great to add with this class, especially since you think she may be wanting to work with me.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. That's no problem.
Thank you.
And then I see that you asked about growth books and stuff. So all that's in the study guide. So look at that. Look at
Okay.
that study guide. I have a ton of different books. I also even have some YouTube videos that are in there that are, I think they're great. I think they're super detailed what they have in there for you. I even have some articles for you to look at too. So there's a lot of stuff in there for you to look at.
Thank you so much. You are so awesome.
You are super welcome.
Have a great day.
You too. Okay, honey, you have a question. What's your question?
Not really a question, just more of a comment, actually.
Okay.
I when I first started reading about like pagan stuff, I of course started out with Wicca. And
Almost everybody.
right. Um, and thankfully I did not go the main one.
A
The
Gardanian?
Yeah, I didn't go with that book. I actually read the one by Thea Sabin. I love that.
That's a good one
That
too. That's a good
yeah.
one too.
But anyway, I actually live on the corner of the crossroad. And
Ooh.
yeah, when I started reading about the different gods and goddesses and then how to work with them, that witchcraft, Hekate, hey, that'd be cool. But I didn't actually really do more with it because she didn't seem scary to me, just more intimidating because like I didn't want to screw up. I was still in a place of like, really, if I do something wrong, will they be mad at me? Also did not help that I'm pretty sure the Wiccan goddess, I did not do something that I said I would, and I'm pretty sure she killed my family's refrigerator. So that was not exactly a good, intro. But anyway, as I was reading about this, I read a bit about Hecate, and I actually every once in a while, like when I woke up, I didn't actually see it physically. It was like through my third eye before I realized what that meant. I would like see a figure standing out on the corner of the crossroad, like on my property in the corner there. And I did not know what that was at the time. So after hearing your explanation of everything, that makes a lot more sense now. Because
That
I was
makes a
also
lot of
getting
sense.
like, yeah, because I was also getting like seeing a lot more keys, hearing that like the neighbor's dog out yonder, and
That makes a lot of sense. Because too, and even with you saying too, like there are times to where in Wicca she is placed as the goddess next to the horn god. So that makes a lot of sense that you say that.
Okay. Anyway, that was just my 2 cents I want to put in there.
Okay, any other questions or comments or anything before I call her in for you guys? I went over a lot, so please, please, please go over the study guide too. Because like I said, there's a lot to her, and it's so much more than what people know her as today. There's just so much to her. She covers so many different domains. Um, so what I'm gonna do here, like I usually do here now, because I need to get the altar reset for you guys. I am going to shut off my camera and mute myself for probably about 5 minutes here while I do that. If you haven't been with me before, what I would like for you guys to do is drop into sacred space, sacred container, get into a meditative state, call forth your energy, whatever you call it. Everybody calls it something differently. I call it sacred container. That's typically what you hear from me is it's a sacred container because I view with everything energetically. A lot of people, like I said, they call it meditative space, sacred space, anything like that. But I'm gonna get ready, and so I want you guys to please do that for about 5 minutes before I come in, and I will call her in for you guys to meet her. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers. I summon you, and I thank you for being here with us today. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers of the direction of north, the element of earth. I call to you and I ask you to please provide everybody in this circle with grounding and nurturing energy. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers of the direction of east, the element of air, and I ask that you please bless this circle with intellect and imagination, and I thank you so very much for holding the Eastern Gateway this afternoon. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers of the element of fire in the direction of south, and I ask that you please provide this circle with passion and strength this afternoon. I thank you so very much, guardians and gatekeepers, for holding the Southern Gateway this afternoon. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers of the direction of west and the element of water. I ask that you bless this circle with love and cleansing energy. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers of the direction of west and the element of water, and I thank you so very much for holding the Western Gateway this afternoon. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers, ascended masters, interdimensional beings, spirits, elements, ancestors, and all other energy that wishes to welcome us here and protect us, provide us with love, cleansing energy, protection and connection, wisdom, clarity, and understanding this afternoon. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers of above and below. I thank each and every one of you so very much for holding all of your gateways this afternoon. I call to you, dear goddess Hekate, goddesses of all paths, seer of all ways. I call to you to please guide me through my shadows. Stand beside me. Don't tell me which way to go, but just be my guiding light. Whisper to me things that I need to pay attention to and show me what is right in front of me. Hekate, goddess of all things, tell me where to place my feet. Tell me where to be. Meet me at the crossroads. Great goddess, O Hekate, who knows all fates, but rarely ever tells us their secrets. I ask for you to take and hold my hand and to lead me and each and every soul within this circle down this divine path. I call to you, O Hekate, great goddess of the underworld, keeper of the keys. I call to you, great Hekate, the one who spins the web of stars and governs the spiral of life, the wheel of fate. I call to you, O great Hekate, the night queen and our guardian, our protector, the one who shows pity to those who need it, and the one who blesses those who need protection. I call to you, O great Hekate, the most lovely one, who is an ancient Thracian goddess of the moon, who's represented as the maiden and the crone, the queen of spirits, ghosts, graveyards, cemeteries. I call to you, O great Hekate, the goddess of transformation and rebirth, of liminal spaces, liminal times, and liminal spirits. Please hold us in those moments. Guide us with your torches and your hounds alongside of you. I call to you, O great Hekate, and I summon you here. I thank you so very much for being in our presence within this circle this afternoon. Now everybody take a couple deep breaths in and a couple deep breaths out as you feel her energy start to fill up your sacred container, as you feel it start to fill around you. Notice what you feel physically. Notice what you smell. Notice what you see. Notice what you hear. You may feel an emotion. You may feel physical sensation. You may feel a vibrational energy. Take a few breaths in and a few breaths out. Now, however she's presenting to you, I ask that you raise your gaze and you meet her. You thank her and you honor her for being in your presence. Now, you can get as comfortable as you like. She may bring you somewhere. You may stay within your sacred container, but ask if she's willing to have a conversation with you. And if so, you can begin. You can ask her whatever questions are coming to you. Are you wanting to seek her for protection? Are you calling to her to seek for guidance? Are you calling to her to seek a rebirth, a death, a transformation? Are you calling to her because you are at an absolutely pivotal moment within your sacred contract that you need to make a decision? No decision is wrong, but each decision is going to have a different path. Is that why you're calling to her? How is she presenting to you? Do you hear things? Do you see things? Do you smell things? Breath in and out. Are you coming to her as goddess of the underworld? Are you coming to her as goddess of the crossroads? Are you coming to her as keeper of the keys? Are you coming to her as a moon goddess? How is she coming to you? Remember, she's the goddess of witchcraft. She's the queen of the world of spirits. She's a snake goddess and a great mother. She can be represented as all three aspects of the triple moon, or just the maiden, or just the crone. Do you need to separate her, or do you need to fully understand your wholeness yourself and her wholeness as who she is? Is she here to just help you with your witchcraft and your magic? Is she calling to you to work with herbs and poisons? Is she calling to you because there's somebody in your life who's been through great pain that she feels you need to take pity on and protect? And pity in a good way, not a bad way. Remember, she's a goddess who guards your opportunities. She's the queen of magic and circumstances. She's the key holder to the soul of the world. She's the key holder to all infinite wisdom. She holds the power over many realms. One more time. In and out. In and out. We call to you, dear Hekate, at this time before you, to remind us that when we doubt, to show us our strength, to remind us when we feel we are wrong, to show us that there is no wrong path. We call to you and thank you, oh dear Grey Hekate, to light the crossroads before us, so that we may decide which path we are going to choose. We call to you, O Grey Hekate, the Queen of Transitions, the guardian of doorways and liminal spaces, liminal times, liminal spirits, and liminal events in our lives. We call to you, O Grey Hekate, to bless our journeys through both the dark, the dawn, the day, and the dusk. We call to you, O Grey Hekate, to help bring us to balance within all the forces within us. We call to you, O Grey Hekate, to remind us of the light above, the dark below, the dark within, the dark without, the light within, and the light without. We call to you, O Grey Hekate, to stay with us, to guide us, and to keep your torches beside us. We'll take a few more breaths in and out. And as you're doing so, I want you to thank her for coming to you today, and no matter what way she came to you. If she provided you with any insight, any knowledge, or a message, I ask that you provide her with a thanks. If you feel a pull to her and she feels a pull to you, let her know when you're going to see her again. If you're going to make plans, go ahead and do that. Now say our final goodbye, as Hekate will be released, and we thank her for being here with us this afternoon. Call to you, O Grey Hekate. I thank you so much for being here with us today. The keeper of the keys, goddess of the underworld, queen of witches, the liminal spirit, the soul of the world. I thank you so very much for being willing to meet each and every one of these souls here today. I thank you so very much for taking time out of your many duties to be here with us. If you feel pulled to any within this circle, I ask that you reach out to them again, and I ask that you be willing to meet them again in their own space. And I thank you so very much for being here today. And I release you. I call back the guardians and gatekeepers of the direction of west and the element of water. I thank you so very much for holding the Western Gateway this afternoon. I call back the guardians and gatekeepers of the element of fire and the direction of south. And I thank you so very much for holding the Southern Gateway this afternoon. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers of the direction of east and the element of air. And I thank you so very much for holding the Eastern Gateway this afternoon. I call to the guardians and gatekeepers of the direction of north and the element of earth. And I thank you so very much for holding the Northern Gateway this afternoon. I call to the guardians and the gatekeepers of the directions above and below, all ascended masters, spirit guides, elements, other deities, archetype energies, any other interdimensional beings, and all those who are within the circle with us this afternoon. I thank you so very much for holding each and every one of your gateways this afternoon. And I release you. Amen. Aho. So moved it is. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I hope you got everything that you wanted and needed out of that. I hope you got some great shadow work ideas and answers. I hope you got to meet her in some way, shape, or form. It's like I said, even not visual, there's so many other ways she can present to you. If you guys want to, you are more than welcome. You can take yourself off of mute, you can discuss it, you can put yourself in chat. It is totally up to you. Deity work is super personal, so I never expect anybody to share anything if you don't want to, but you certainly can if you'd like. And then I forgot to warn you guys beforehand. My energy can be super purifying and super cleansing and super protective as well. So if you got overwhelmed at all, if you feel overwhelmed, like dizzy, like tired or anything, please ground yourself, drink some water, grab any crystals. If you have lapis lazuli, that's a personal attachment that I have to crystals, and that will help clear my energy and help you ground with that. And then before I have you guys talk, if you guys would like to, I did remember too, right before when I was setting the altar, I forgot to touch on her hounds. There's one story that I wanted to touch on her hounds. So both of her hounds are actually said to be actually women, like human women that were turned into the hounds for like punishment, from gods. One is actually a previous queen of Troy. So when Troy fell, she was kidnapped like on the ship. She was getting brought back to with the king, with the Thracian king, and she was like, I'm not doing this. And she actually stabbed and killed him. And the punishment was that she's going to be turned into a black dog and a hound. And she was like, well, I'm not doing that. So she threw herself into the ocean. But then the gods still turned her into a hound anyway. And Hekate actually took pity on her and brought her in. So that's actually one of the hounds. It's actually a former queen of Troy. And then the other one, actually, if I remember correctly, the other one is that's another version of like what happened to I talked about her actually before. That's actually the handmaiden that helped give birth to Hercules. So there's a thought that she was a weasel, and there's also a thought that she was turned into a hound. So all of her familiars are actually like humans that have been turned into those familiars as punishment from deities. Okay, so if anybody wants to talk, go ahead, put it in the chat. You can let me know about your experience. You can take yourself off mute. You can raise your hand, whatever you would like to. If you don't want to, you totally can. Yeah, like I said, I know it's totally up to you. Okay, I'm double checking the chat too while I wait to see. Have a good day, Melody. Thank you so much for being here with me. I really hope you appreciate it. And if you liked it, I do these every Sunday for Dark Goddess Devotionals. So next week we're doing the Greek goddess Eris, and then I have Tiamat coming up, Sekhmet coming up, a lot of big goddesses coming up. So definitely check us out again. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leah. I absolutely love that. I love sharing my knowledge and my experience. I absolutely love doing that for you guys. I have no problem. I love doing it. And I hope you keep coming. Honey, what do you got to share for me? You usually get pretty good visuals.
Thank you. Uh, uh, she came in pretty strong, like normal, I guess. And I actually kind of like, okay. I know there's a way where you can like astral travel, but not actually like fully leave, just like send a part of yourself, like a fetch. I have not actually researched the name fetch, but I know it comes from a Celtic thing. But that's the only word I know to use for that. And I kind of did
I know
that.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. And she was once you started calling her, I looked out my window and she was standing there again. So I could kind of feel pulled, so I did like somehow did the fetch thing. I thought I was like actually like projecting or something, but I was just, it wasn't like fully, because I actually did that once accidentally, which is how I know about that. Anyway, so we kind of met out there. My shield wolves were kind of growling at her. I told them to knock it
Interesting.
off. Right? I figured like she'd be good with dogs. They would like her. I don't know.
Maybe
But
they didn't like her hounds. Maybe it was a territorial thing with them and the hounds.
oh, that could be. That makes sense. Um, so but after she kind of after we said hi for a minute, she actually came inside and sat next to me on my bench. And we just basically talked. She was kind of she felt like mothering, but close to my age. She looked close to my age, which is like around between 25 and 30, I'd say. And she actually let me like lean my head on her shoulder, and she's like very nurturing and mothering, like touching, like you know, like patting your head, touching your shoulder, something like that. Um, I don't remember fully what she said to describe it back, but it was just basically like asking me the questions I was asking her, kind of like how the Morgan did a little bit, but more giving advice along with the mirroring.
I get
And
what you're
when
saying. I get what you're saying.
yeah,
She was
and when
mirroring you.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, she was mirroring me, and then when I actually asked her for advice, she gave it. She didn't just ask me what I thought. She actually gave advice once I figured something out myself.
That's usually that's usually how she goes. That makes a lot of sense because I don't know if you've noticed, but like when I was doing my prayers and invocation, like I'm very specific on like her like showing but not telling, if
Yeah,
that makes
yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I like to write, so I hear that a lot.
sense.
Which outside she was like in a long dress, black dress, fur coat. She had like a long torch, kind of like a staff almost, but I don't know if it was lit. And then when she was inside with me, she was just in like a normal black gown. Most of the goddesses that have come, except Lilith, she was in jeans. Um, most of the goddesses have come in like it's like a black gown or the different color gown, but like thin straps, just like what you would picture any Greek goddess would be wearing when you searched up their images. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Uh, and then after we got done talking, when you started to call her back, we went back out to a crossroad. She said goodbye. I thanked her, of course. She turned around and just kind of walked and disappeared as she was actually hitting the road.
Okay. Interesting.
And that was it. Then I just kind of tapped myself to make sure I was fully back, and here we are.
You almost always get brought somewhere. You almost always get brought somewhere. It's so interesting. I love it. 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 Do you think you're gonna work with her again more?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was one thing she said. I said I'd like to work with her, and she said, "Oh, we definitely will at some point."
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for listening.
Does anybody else have anything else they want to say? Otherwise, we are good to go. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for being here with me today, guys. I really, really appreciate it. And again, like I keep my energy connected to you guys for about an hour after this to make sure like you guys don't get abruptly cut off, but it will get cut off in about an hour from you guys. So I will do that. But again, it'll stay connected to you for about an hour. And then I look forward to seeing you guys here again tomorrow. We have Samhain virtual celebration. Next week we are doing why do I always do this to myself? Honey, did I see you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask real quick. You didn't give us homework for
I didn't.
Morgan. I don't think so.
I'll put it in the chat. I'll decide what I want you guys to do.
Okay, thanks.
I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it in the Dark Goddess the chat.
Yeah.
I do not remember what I had decided I wanted to do, so I will double check that quick and then put that in the chat.
I have a
Okay.
question, Kelsey,
Yeah, go ahead.
about actually homework. So
Yes.
do you want us to submit it to you or is homework for our reference?
So it's for your reference, and then I kind of got a little bit behind on it because with my son being sick and everything. But once a week, usually on Mondays, I pop into the chat so that we can review it. And you guys can ask me any questions that you have on it, and things like that. And then when it comes to my certification program, which I'm just about done creating that, turning in those homework assignments, that's part of getting you credit for your class. So then that will go towards like those end up getting posted to your student transcript. So those are like when you would email essays. So your homework assignments, what you pretty much emailed and said. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So for the homework, that's for the people that's already in the group, correct?
Yeah, but you can do it for yourself too and for your own reference. And then like if you do it now, then you don't have to do it later for a certification program if you enroll and choose to do that. Because like I said, sometimes if you've already sent us a message, we're gonna get to you as soon as we can. I totally promise. We have a lot of stuff going on, and I think we have one admin right now that handles that. But if you do it now, then you don't have to do it later too. So it helps you in the long run. But it's up to you guys. You guys, like I said, I'm not gonna force you guys to do anything. It's totally up to you.
Oh, no, no. If there's homework, I'm very interested in learning everything. So if there's homework, I'd love to do it. So, just if you wouldn't mind, add that in with the email with Morgan and everything that you need to add in today within one email.
Sounds good. I can do that for you.
Do you want me
Uh,
to send? Do you want me to send you another email or?
yeah, just to make sure I don't miss it and it didn't go to spam.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem. And then I did double check here. So next week we're doing the Greek goddess Eris. I know I'm doing two Greek goddesses in a row, but the biggest reason why I wanted to do her is her asteroid was discovered a few years back. And so that collectively, astrologically, she is impacting us massively. And she's a very minor god, like she's a major goddess, but she's very unknown. So it's a big reason why I want to cover her and I'm going over her. So I look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday for that. Have a good afternoon, guys. Thank you so much for being here with me.